What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today, we got some new Keyforge cards to talk about, haven't we? And you know the deal. We are now getting into reveal time, etc. for the new set, Dark Tidings. And as these new cards are revealed, I'm going to show them to you, and we're going to have a quick chat about them, because that's the kind of thing I do. So we'll start off with an action card from Logos, Forgive or Forget. And you've actually got a choice here, which we don't see very often in Keyforge. When you play the card, you get to do one of two things. Either you archive two cards of different types from your discard pile, that is to say, an upgrade and an action, or a creature and an artifact, etc. Or you can purge up to two cards from each discard pile. Now, I love this. I mean, thematically, it's wonderful with a Forgive or Forget. Forgive by archiving, Forget by purging. But what we see here is mechanically a very interesting card. You see, we've talked about archiving a lot on this channel. Archiving is brilliant. You put cards in your archive, and then at the beginning of your turn, you have a choice to either grab every card or no cards from your archive. It's an all or nothing thing. But when you're archiving cards from your discard pile, it's phenomenal. Because what you're basically doing is playing the card now, Forgive or Forget, putting the cards from your discard pile into your archive, knowing that at the beginning of your next turn you can pick them up. So you grab the two cards you really want, you know which house you're then going to choose, and it basically says that at the beginning of your next turn, you can have any two cards from your discard pile. Tell me that doesn't sound amazing, because it really should. And instead you can purge up to two cards from each discard pile. But the up to here is what really makes this amazing. Because you can go, I'm going to purge no cards from my discard pile, and I'm going to purge two cards from your discard pile. How mean is that? I love this. Remember, purge basically means you get rid of the cards and they ain't coming back. So the idea here that you can either take any two cards from your discard, knowing that you can get them at the beginning of your next turn, or you can purge two cards from your opponent's discard pile, and to be fair, you can purge some cards from yours as well, which can be really good because, I mean, you see this a lot in deck building games rather than TCGs, but getting rid of bad cards so you don't end up drawing them can be a really useful thing. And you can do that here. Dry the River is a Sanctum artifact, and each creature gains while the tide is low. This creature cannot reap. Now, we go back to the tide mechanic. I did do a video about this a couple days ago. I'll link it in the description. But essentially, you get the choice to either, well, if the tide is low for you, you can gain free chains and swap it round. Though there are going to be plenty of other cards that can change the tide. But basically, this is an artifact that, and it's two-sided, because it's each creature gains, but it basically says that whoever's got the tide low for them cannot reap. So you play this down while the tide is high for you, and your opponent has a really awkward choice. Either they take free chains to raise the tide, assuming, of course, they don't have some other mechanic to do so, or none of their creatures can reap. And I've said before, I said in my video the other day, that when it comes to the tide, we are going to need a compelling reason. We are going to need a good reason to take free chains so that we can raise the tide for us. And this is exactly the kind of card that is going to do exactly that. This is a card that basically says, well, you know what, right? Either you take free chains or you can't reap. And a lot of the time, not being able to reap is a bad thing, because you're not gaining amber, and if you're not gaining amber, you're not winning the game. Yeah, this one is harsh, ladies and gentlemen. This is exactly the kind of card which is going to force both players to constantly be raising the tide. I suppose it's choosing between reaping and drawing cards. Gutted. Bury Riches is a Saurian Republic action, and when you play it, if the tide is high, you move one amber from each creature to its controller's pool. Otherwise, you raise the tide. So this is one of those cards I was talking about a moment ago that lets you raise the tide without having to take the free chains, which is cool. Now, obviously, if the tide is already high, that's not a great thing. But you can always discard it from your hand. It's really not the end of the world. But this gives you a chance to raise the tide, and I just gave you an example of a phenomenal card that might want you to raise it. But the other part of this is, if the tide is high, you move 1 amber from each creature to its controller's pool. Now this could backfire. If your opponent has 7 creatures of amber on and you only have 1, then your opponent gets those 7 amber and you get 1. And do remember, amber on a creature will be gained by the other player if you destroy the creature, if the creature gets destroyed. So if your opponent's got 6 creatures with amber on, you do not want to give them 6 amber, you want to destroy those 6 creatures so that you get the 6 amber. So timing is going to be extremely important for this card. But it is worth bearing in mind this is a Saurian Republic card. And the real special skill of the Saurian Republic is Exalting. Exalting is where you put an amber from the common pool onto your creature. So if you've got a Saurian Republic deck with lots of Exalting, and there's a decent chance you will, that's what the Saurian Republic do, then what you essentially get here is you exalt 5 or 6 of your creatures, then you play this and move all that amber over. Of course, if the tide is low, then you've still got to make the choice as to whether you're willing to pay the free chains to do so. But that is a very, very interesting one for me. Something to bear in mind. Archon's Revenge is a Shadows artifact, and it's got an action that lets you exhaust up to 2 friendly Shadows creatures, and for each creature exhausted this way, you steal 1 amber. So essentially, it gives every Shadows creature an action to steal 1 amber. It turns every Shadows creature into Yantzee Gang, for instance. Which is kind of a weird one. But then again, stealing amber is amazing. Stealing amber means that you get more amber and your opponent gets less amber. Which is definitely a good thing. And a lot of the time we wish we had more creatures that stole an amber. So, I kind of love this. It's not letting you steal while you do something else. It's not letting you steal with non-Shadows creatures. It's not letting you use it on a non-Shadows turn. But what it is doing is allowing you to essentially steal with more of your creatures. And if you can get multiples of these in one deck, you can have a fairly ridiculous deck in terms of stealing. I like this. I mean, thematically it's beautiful for Shadows, but the fact of the matter is it lets you take a rubbish creature. I mean, take something like Urchin, right? When you play Urchin, you get to steal an amber, yay! But then Urchin sucks, because Urchin is just a 1-power creature. You do have Elusive, and that's lovely, but you sit there essentially reaping, hoping you don't get destroyed. Well, now you can exhaust it to steal an amber. And of course, this is another one of those, if your opponent doesn't have good artifact control, that is going to be extremely awkward for them, because now they're going to have to try and take out all of your creatures, because all of your creatures are stealing, and that's kind of funny. As long as you're the one that's played Archon's Revenge. So that's a lot of non-creatures. Let's finish off with a couple of creatures. Kaup? Maybe? This is from the new House Unfathomable. 2 power, 0 armor. Your opponent cannot play more than 1 card of each type each turn. Now, to be fair, that does still give them up to 4 cards, an action, an artifact, a creature, and an upgrade. But that's assuming they've got all 4 in their hand. Remember, as a general rule, assuming there's no hand disruption or any of that going on, we should start, or any extra drawing, we should start our turn with 6 cards in hand. Now, there will be turns where our opponent's got this creature down and we want to go for Mars, and we've got 1 Mars action, 1 Mars artifact, 1 Mars creature, 1 Mars upgrade, and we go, ha, that's done nothing. But the reality is that is going to be the exception rather than the rule. There are going to be a lot of times where your opponent has got 4 creatures and they want to play 4 creatures, but they're not allowed to play 4 creatures, so they don't. And that's what gets kind of hilarious here. I mean, this is very, very reminiscent of Ember Imp. And Ember Imp has proven to be one of the most disruptive, annoying cards we've seen in the game. The difference is Ember Imp limits you to playing 2 cards. This limits you to playing 1 card of each type. So, essentially, this could be better than Ember Imp, the same as, or slightly worse. But either way, it is going to be in that same category, that same level of disruption. People are going to hate this. This is going to turn into one of those Burn the Witch cards. This is going to be the kind of card that you have to get off the field the second it hits the field, or things go very, very wrong very, very quickly. And finally, Amberfin Shark. This is a really weird, interesting creature, but it's another one of those creatures from Untamed, and I love them. So, 3 power, 0 armor creature. When you play it, you give Amberfin Shark 3 +1 power counters. Okay. Well, that's cool, 6 power creature. But at the end of your turn, you must remove a +1 power counter from Amberfin Shark. Obviously, it is you have to until there are none. And then each player gains an amber. And I don't know if this is a really awkward card. Now remember, there are other ways of giving extra power counters. Think something like Grovekeeper that gives at the end of your turn each neighbouring creature a +1 power counter, for instance. Or Bumblebird, that when you play you put 2 +1 power counters on each other friendly Untamed creature. It was something Untamed really loved doing back in Age of Ascension. But that would actually make this last longer, because you would just have more power counters on there. And this is weird to me, because this could go really, really badly. I mean, this is another one of those classic cards whereby if you're ahead in the game, brilliant. If you're behind, no. Because there are going to be times where this gets played and your opponent's got 5 amber, and then at the end of your turn you give them an amber, and then they forge a key at the beginning of their turn. That is going to happen sometimes, which is really weird to me. I don't know how much I like Amberfin Shark. Clearly this is a card you can make work for you, but it seems like a fairly skill-intensive card. It seems like the kind of card where you've got to plan it really carefully, because you could end up really hurting yourself / really helping your opponent. But then again, if you play it right, you could end up helping your opponent, but not as much as you help yourself, and then you don't really care. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Bunch of new Keyforge cards to have a chat about. And I like talking about new Keyforge cards, so I did. And I'm going to be back pretty regularly talking about more new Keyforge cards. So, you know, soon as they're out, I'll be talking about them. Maybe you should subscribe if you haven't already. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Keyforge and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.